Wherever you are, welcome to another of my takes on China. And this one is as a result of an email from a friend in New Zealand. He has some problems with other friends, particularly in the religious community that he lives in. But let me go straight to his comment and tell you what he said to me and why I felt it needed answering in both an extended answer and with a full written article and video to give it the credibility and seriousness that it deserves. So, this person, and I won't name him yet as I haven't got his permission, said, "Jerry, I had a heated discussion with a fellow church member who was in China as a missionary from 2005 to 2015 approximately. He was in a province in the west of China but not Xinjiang. I was commenting on how information put out by various organizations that we, our church, used to pray for what's happening in China is wrong and misleading. We didn't get too far into things, but his comments were, all citizens have a social credit score. He had Chinese friends who had to have one, and if one didn't have a good one, they could be banned from, say, taking an overseas plane trip. Xi Jinping was increasingly oppressive to the citizens of China. That Xi Jinping was making everyone in the country study or be indoctrinated in his political beliefs." Wow. My friend's response, he went on to tell me, was, there may be different credit scores in China, like credit scores for getting a loan, but I didn't think every citizen had to have one. The oppression is not borne out from what I've heard, and that China is now the 5th on the list of most visited countries by overseas tourists. This may be so, but only from the basis that all the most recent leaders are included in this as well. I'm not sure exactly what that meant. "What are your comments, Jerry?" he asked. So here we go with my comments. I can 100% assure you, him, and everyone else there are no social credit scores in China. There is a program called the Social Credit Score, and it relates to how businesses interact with the community and their governance. It's completely unrelated to personal information. Now, people are sometimes banned from taking trips. This is true. They may be banned from visiting hotels, intercity travel. It's part of a legal process similar to bail restrictions, but nothing at all to do with how good a citizen they are. There is an app where people who volunteer in the community can build up a reputation and get points, which allow them to better their opportunities when buying tickets to government-funded events when they take place, or reducing a number of demerit points on their driving license, for example. So if you get 5 points for speeding, you can actually work them off by sweeping litter or helping with traffic control at your local school. But there's no mandatory joining of this and no penalties for not being involved. It is completely and totally 100% beneficial to the people. People who do something minor that's wrong, do something good and expunge it. It works very well. It's all positive. It's not negative. Xi Jinping is, by a long way, the most popular leader since Mao. The only way to really know this is true is to check reputable sources. Harvard did a survey pre-COVID. The government satisfaction rate was 95.5%. Many others have found the same thing when they come here and ask. On an anecdotal level, I speak with Chinese people every single day, and while they might have the odd gripe, there's no overall dissatisfaction. Not at all. If there is, they aren't telling me, and they aren't indicating it through their behaviors. And remember, I've studied behavioral psychology. I've also traveled extensively, and I've met with people all across China, including Xinjiang, where I was when I wrote this. I'm back home now. Xi doesn't make anyone study his works, but they are studied. Think about this. Here's a country of 1.4 billion people. It's safe, secure, economically rising. Every measurable metric of lifestyle is improving, with the crown being life expectancy, where it's overtaken the USA. Even pre-COVID pandemic, it had done that. And the cost of medical here is 1/20th the cost of US medical care. Now, of course, people who aspire to leadership should study what this kind of leadership has achieved. So yes, his books are everywhere. Every potential leader will know them, and every college does study him. Deng, Mao, and Marx, they're all studied as part of a foundation year. Only by knowing this material can people who graduate from college and university know the direction from which China emerged and the direction it's going. So it makes a lot of sense to me. It doesn't mean they're indoctrinated. In all honesty, it's possible to arrive in China with a closed mind and remain closed. If we surround ourselves with like-minded people, we'll reinforce our biases. There are, of course, disgruntled people still in China. It's impossible to please all the people all the time. However, of every single person I know who arrives in China for the first time, I've not met one who hasn't been amazed at the infrastructure, struck by how friendly it is. And I did meet one in Zhengzhou a few weeks ago from Australia who said it was polluted. Her 4 friends looked at her and said, "What do you mean? It's totally clean here. It's cleaner than Melbourne." So she had some issues in her mind, but was also very pleased to see that it's safe and incredibly friendly. Now, I thought that might be the end of the discussion with my friend after I'd written all that back to him, but no, he came back to me with this comment. "My friend," he said, "as a missionary in China, was a doctor and worked as such while he was there. He was going as part of a worldwide missionary organization. He was checked upon yearly to make sure he was doctoring and not anything else." "So you're saying," my friend went on, "although he was working, not the real reason he was there, being a foreigner, an eye would be kept on him and those he associated with, and to be involved in spreading the gospel, he would have come under scrutiny. I'm certain he was involved in house churches, which, as I had said previously, could have been underground churches, and this could have been the reason for the extra attention or the perceived attention. He said a lot of Americans were kicked out while he was there because they went on tourist visas and yet they were not doing anything tourist related as missionaries." So my response to that was this. The biggest problem with people like your religious friend is that as a missionary, he was already illegal. The moment he set foot in China, he was probably illegal. He was introduced to an underground church, no doubt, where they're also illegal. Now, most of the people involved will be Western educated or have lived in the West, and they would have learned English to communicate to your missionary friend, and almost certainly would have been exposed to some nefarious intelligence types. I checked with AI, not Chinese AI, just the one that my browser uses, and here's what it said, quote, "The US government does not officially train teachers and missionaries specifically to undermine adversarial governments. However, there are programs aimed at promoting democracy, education, and human rights in various countries." There's the catcher, the last sentence. However, there are programs aimed at promoting democracy, education, and human rights in various countries. And there is no doubt in my mind that your friend would have been told many times, particularly if he was acting as a doctor or a teacher here, that religion is banned in schools and hospitals. His bias would see that as oppression, whereas I see that as completely sensible. Buddhism, Taoism, they're also banned in schools and have millions of adherents here. Islam is banned in schools too, not because any of these are oppressed, because school is for learning education and family is for teaching values. Islam, Christianity, and other religious values are openly encouraged outside of school. Children are allowed to participate in religious activities, but not to attend church until they're old enough to make their adult decisions. Interestingly, Christianity is the fastest growing religion in China. The act of proselytizing is a criminal offense in China, and it makes me sick when I hear people who believe they have the God-given right to come to another country and tell the people of that country that they're living their lives wrongly. Now, personally, I'm not a violent man, so there'd be no aggression at all. They would definitely meet my approval. And you know, I might even report them and happily see them deported. They're not wanted, they're not welcome, and they're certainly not needed. But because they have a belief that is different to mine, they persist in martyring themselves to their cause. I'm happy to help them become a martyr if that's what they wanted. I have absolutely no problem with churches or even home churches. I have absolutely no problem with believers believing in God. But I have a huge problem with people who think they can and must change the lives of people because of their own beliefs. They often prey on misery. They create cult-like fanaticism, which can often, and does often, lead to violence. The Falun Gong cult, the Taipan Rebellion, the Boxer Rebellion, and the deaths of millions of Chinese were all caused by religious zealots wanting to impose their ways on people who needed leadership for whatever reason. It's also clear that where there is poverty, promises of future riches do sound attractive. China doesn't need religion to promise riches in the afterlife. What they need is no exploitation and guidance from a government that provides those riches or relative riches in this life, which, if anyone visits China today, they will see is happening. The largest lifting out of poverty in history, the largest middle class, the greatest increases in life expectancy, and all other lifestyle metrics, the largest number of new cars made and sold. All of these are indicators that the system here is working without God's help. If I met your friend, we would not have a pleasant discussion. I would tell him to his face that he's selfish, and of course, he would do what he could to tell me that I'm wrong about religion. I can and often do disagree and remain friends. Every single Christian, Muslim, Jew, or any other religious member I meet, I will not remain friends, though, with anyone who tells me I must believe. I'd probably walk away before punching him or her in the face. Anyway, rant over. Working on a tourist visa is illegal. I see no reason whatsoever to criticize any government anywhere that deports people doing that. Now, the USA is going through it at the moment, and I do criticize them, not for the action they're taking, but the manner in which they're taking it. I know for a fact that Australia and the UK, where I've lived, would both have kicked out anyone caught working on a tourist visa the moment it came to light. If that's a criticism, I'd challenge him on that. If it's an observation, I'd assume he would not feel it's okay to have an influx of potentially unqualified people working in an industry. In China, it used to be teaching. Many foreigners who are unqualified came here to teach and got away with it for years. These are the world's biggest hypocrites, people like Serpent ZA and his sidekick, Lawai 86, both teaching here until the law was imposed that they must be qualified teachers. They must have a clean criminal record. That was implemented many years ago, but only got rigorously followed correctly in 2016 after an announcement was made in 2015. Now, we did lose some good teachers, which was sad, but we also lost several pedophiles, we lost some criminals, and we lost a hell of a lot of drunks. So it was a good law overall. Every person who has a resident permit will get checked to make sure they live where they say they live, to make sure they're doing what they're employed to do. This is normal. It's the same in the UK. I know for a fact. I was a policeman there. My workplaces and home have been checked at least once a year, and again, I see no problem with that. Your friend, if he went to church every week, would not have had any more problems than I have not going to church. The immigration authorities don't care a jot about his religious beliefs or how he practices them, but I'm certain before he came here as a missionary, he would have been strongly warned, probably even trained in evasive maneuvers to measure to avoid being caught. Isn't it strange how these people demand their own laws be strongly imposed on immigrants when they themselves will go to other countries as immigrants and break their laws? It's a fact. USAID spends a lot of money training people who plan to visit China as missionaries. They call it promoting democracy, education, and human rights. I call it interference in internal affairs. I know there are many people who come to, and even people who are still in China, who hate the place. They dislike the environment, the weather, the language. I even know people who spend years here and refuse to eat in a Chinese restaurant. Here's the thing. They can all go home if they want. They choose not to because their home is often worse than China, at least for them. They will justify being here by saying things like, I'm invested in China, I have kids growing up in China, or I have business interests, or I'm married, and these things keep me here. But the bottom line is, they're here because they're making money, living a good life, and they can't manage to enjoy the same degree of comfort, convenience, and lifestyle in their own countries. If they have children and still hate China, I'd say to them, you must really hate your children then, to force them to live in this place that you hate. I once sat at a table with a man who told me in front of his Chinese wife that all Chinese people are thieves. I took one look at his wife and I said to her, not him, I'm sorry you have to live with this, but I'm not staying at the same table as someone who thinks my wife and her family are thieves, before walking away. Now, believe it or not, with one or two exceptions, almost every person I know who has this attitude towards China is a believer in Jesus. To me, they're the most unchristian people I know, and they say and do the most unchristian things. Thanks very much for watching my take on China, and please, you will have comments about this. It's quite a controversial topic. Let me engage with you. Give me your comments, and don't forget to like, share, and check that subscribe button. Bye for now.